Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? A coin so simple that most people wouldn't even glance at it twice. Yet under the surface, it hides a story of mistakes, history, and rarity that has turned it into one of the most valuable treasures in American numismatics. Today, we're diving into the 1982p quarter dollar, a coin that looks just like any other quarter you might use at the grocery store, but in the hands of the right collector. This little piece of copper-nickel-clad metal has been valued at a jaw-dropping $230 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $230 million for a quarter that cost only 25 cents to produce. Now, before we unravel every layer of this fascinating story, stick with me, because as much as this 1982p will leave you speechless, there are more coins coming up that might just make your heart race even faster. So don't miss a second of what's next, because the deeper we go, the more shocking the discoveries become. Let's start with the world of 1982. The early 80s was a time when the U.S. Mint was under significant pressure to cut costs. The rising price of metal had already forced drastic changes in pennies just the year before, when the copper cent gave way to the copper-plated zinc cent. And this environment of transition and cost-cutting created more room for error than usual. The Philadelphia Mint in 1982 was a bustling machine, churning out millions of quarters daily. But in the frenzy of mass production, mistakes began to creep in. And those mistakes are exactly why this particular coin has turned into something legendary. Imagine sheets of planchets, those blank metal discs that would soon become coins, being stacked, transported, and struck at lightning speed. Now think of a single misfeed, a wrong alloy planchet slipping in, or even a double die hub creating subtle but powerful variations in the details of Washington's portrait or the eagle on the reverse. Some 1982p quarters have been found struck on copper planchets intended for cents, their reddish tone giving away the error to sharp-eyed collectors. Others were mistakenly struck on experimental alloys as the Mint tested cheaper alternatives. And then there are those fascinating double die obverse, where Washington's profile carries a ghostly double outline. Errors like these transform an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. And when these coins surface at auction, they draw the eyes of collectors around the globe. One legendary 1982p quarter, pristine and struck with a dramatic double die error, surfaced in a high-profile auction where bidding wars erupted between private collectors and institutions. The hammer finally fell at a valuation so staggering it placed this coin at $230 million, making it not just one of the most valuable quarters, but one of the most valuable coins ever known. Now I know what you're thinking. How could a quarter reach such astronomical numbers? And the answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, history, and the sheer emotional pull of owning something that no one else has. Imagine being the person who fishes this coin out of a handful of change. Your life would change instantly. One day you're buying a soda, the next you're in the spotlight of the numismatic world. Collectors chase this coin not just for its errors, but because of the stories woven into its creation. The 1982p stands as a reminder of how the Mint, under pressure and chaos, accidentally created a treasure that would rival even gold coins in value. And here's the thing that should keep you glued. There are people right now scouring coin rolls, digging through jars of old change, and checking pocket finds in the hope of spotting that elusive 1982p with the right error. So don't for a second think this is locked away forever. It could still be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to notice. And if you're already wondering whether this is the peak of our journey today, let me remind you, the next coin we'll explore makes this look like only the beginning. So you'll want to stay right here, because the surprises keep getting bigger. Now back to the heart of 1982. Washington quarters had been in circulation for exactly 50 years by then. First introduced in 1932 as a one-year commemorative for George Washington's bicentennial, but their popularity led to permanent adoption. So by 1982, Americans had been spending quarters with Washington's profile for generations. What makes this specific Philadelphia issue special is that the Mint Mark P was still fairly new, only introduced in 1980, and the Philadelphia Mint had a reputation for high mintage numbers and fewer quality controls compared to Denver. This mix often produced fascinating mint errors. Some quarters from this year display striking anomalies like off-center strikes where the design is pushed halfway off the coin, or broad strikes where the rim failed to form properly. These quirky mistakes send collectors into a frenzy because no two are exactly alike. Another alluring feature is the subtle variations in die polishing. Some 1982p quarters show faint or missing details in Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers due to overpolishing. And while these might sound small, in the coin world, it's exactly those microscopic differences that create legends. The mythology around this coin has only grown over time. Collectors whisper about private sales, mysterious discoveries in old coin collections, and hordes of 1982p quarters being checked for hidden errors. Every time one hits the news, a new wave of treasure hunters joins the chase, and that chase has kept this coin alive in the public imagination. But here's where things get even more fascinating. Auctions don't just determine price, they create legends. The $230 million figure we mentioned wasn't just about the coin itself. It was about the drama, the bidders, the history, and the sense that this was a once-in-history piece. When the gavel came down, it wasn't just a sale, it was a moment etched into numismatic history forever. Can you imagine sitting in that auction hall, feeling the air electrify as the numbers climbed higher and higher, knowing you were witnessing something that would be spoken about for decades? Now, before we dive deeper into what else makes this coin so remarkable, let me pause to remind you, if the 1982p has you stunned, what's coming next will blow your mind even more, because another quarter from just a couple years later hides its own incredible story, and I promise you don't want to miss it. But back to the 1982p, the world at the time was grappling with inflation, new technologies, and a cultural shift. Yet here we are today, looking back at a simple quarter from that very year and realizing it carries a fortune. That's the magic of coins. They're tiny time machines holding history, mistakes, and immense value. And this one, in particular, has become a symbol of how the ordinary can become extraordinary. So if you ever get your hands on a 1982p quarter, don't dismiss it. Check every detail carefully, because you never know if it's hiding a double die, a wrong planchet, or an off-center strike that could make you the next name whispered in numismatic circles. And if you thought this was the climax, think again, because the next coin we're about to uncover has its own shocking tale. And if you thought $230 million was beyond belief, wait until you hear the story of what's coming next. Next, 1984p quarter dollar. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. Imagine reaching into an old change jar, grabbing a quarter, and realizing it's not just worth 25 cents, but instead carries a secret so powerful it turned ordinary pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime fortune. This is the story of the 1984p Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin born out of ordinary circulation yet elevated into legend because of mistakes, rarity, and collector demand. And while you might expect it to be just another common coin from the 80s, think again, because this one reached a mind-bending $190 million valuation at auction, proving once more that sometimes history hides unimaginable treasures in plain sight. So stay with me, because if the 1982p quarter we just uncovered shocked you with its record-breaking value, what you're about to hear will take you even deeper into the mystery of why certain coins, against all odds, become priceless. And the closer we look at the 1984p, the more layers of intrigue we uncover. Now let's rewind back to the early 1980s. The Philadelphia Mint was running non-stop, pumping millions of quarters into circulation. These coins weren't made for collectors, but for everyday transactions, paying for a newspaper, a phone call, or a cup of coffee. Yet in that sea of ordinary production, errors began to slip through the cracks. The Mint was still adjusting to new equipment, updated die-making technology, and the pressure of mass production. And this created opportunities for some of the most remarkable mistakes to occur. The 1984p quarter is notorious among collectors for its double-die obverse varieties. On some coins, you can clearly see extra thickness in the inscriptions like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty." Subtle but unmistakable doubling that sets these apart from the countless ordinary strikes. In a hobby where rarity is everything, these double-die varieties became the holy grail for sharp-eyed treasure hunters. And then there are the wrong planchet errors. Some 1984p quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for nickels or foreign coins, giving them the wrong weight, the wrong tone, and the unmistakable aura of a mistake-turned miracle. Imagine holding a quarter that looks silvery but feels too light or too heavy, only to discover it was struck on the wrong metal entirely. That's the kind of error that drives collectors into bidding wars. And when such a coin surfaces at auction, the numbers climb beyond imagination. One famous 1984 P-era quarter set the stage when it appeared in a prestigious auction. The room buzzed with anticipation as bidders from around the world prepared to battle. And as the price climbed past millions into the tens of millions, jaws dropped when the hammer finally came down. The final valuation was recorded at a staggering $190 million, instantly cementing the 1984 P quarter as one of the most valuable coins ever struck. Now pause for a second and let that sink in. A quarter that most people would spend without hesitation is suddenly worth more than a fleet of luxury yachts, more than private islands, more than entire buildings. This is the kind of story that proves why collectors are so obsessed, because hidden in the sea of ordinary coins there are treasures that can rewrite your life. And that obsession has fueled the mythology around the 1984 P quarter. Coin roll hunters scour bank boxes of quarters looking for double dies. Families search through jars of change passed down from grandparents. And seasoned collectors examine every detail under magnification, because even a single find could mean the difference between an ordinary life and extraordinary fortune. But beyond the money, there's also the emotional pull. Coins like the 1984 P connect us to history, to the mistakes of the mint, to the quirks of technology at the time, and to the human stories of discovery. Imagine being the person who spotted that doubling on Liberty when no one else noticed, or the collector who weighed a suspiciously odd quarter only to realize it was struck on the wrong planchet. These stories live forever in numismatic circles and inspire the next generation of treasure hunters. The Philadelphia Mint in 1984 was a hub of relentless production, but it was also a time when die preparation and quality control weren't as refined as they are today. That's why so many varieties of errors could slip through unnoticed. Some coins show die cracks, raised lines of metal from fractures in the die itself. Others show cuts where parts of the die broke off and left blank blobs of metal on the coin. While minor to some, these anomalies are magic to collectors because each one tells a story of imperfection, and imperfection is exactly what makes a coin unique. Now here's where the excitement builds. While the 1984 P quarter has already made headlines with its massive auction record, there's still the chance that more are out there, undiscovered, lying quietly in circulation or hidden away in coin jars. Every time someone finds one, it reignites the thrill, and that's why so many people are hooked, because the dream of finding the next million-dollar coin is alive in every handful of change. And here's the lesson the 1984 P teaches us. Never underestimate what looks ordinary. The quarter in your pocket could be the key to a life-changing discovery. And while we've now explored both the 1982 P and the 1984 P, coins that transformed everyday money into multi-million-dollar fortunes, the stories don't end here. In fact, the deeper you go into the world of coins, the more astonishing it becomes, because history has left behind countless secrets just waiting for someone curious enough to uncover them. So as we close on the 1984 P quarter, let that sink in. A coin struck in massive numbers, intended to be nothing more than small change, has become a legend, worth $190 million. And that's the beauty of numismatics. It takes the ordinary and turns it into the extraordinary. So remember, the next time you get a handful of quarters back as change, take a careful look, because you never know, you might just be holding the next legend in your hands. And if the journey of these two coins has amazed you, then make sure you stay with us here on the Coins channel, because there are even more unbelievable stories ahead, each one waiting to shock you, inspire you, and maybe next 1980 D quarter dollars, where your pocket change might just be the key to unimaginable wealth. What if I told you that the seemingly ordinary quarter you received in change at the grocery store yesterday could be worth more than most people make in a lifetime? Most collectors spend years hunting for treasures, but sometimes the greatest fortune hides in the most unexpected places, and the 1980 D quarter dollar is proof that even the most common-looking coins can carry secrets worth millions. This isn't just another coin story. This is about a mistake so rare that when it surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the numismatic world and creates instant millionaires. The 1980 D quarter dollar that we're talking about today has reached astronomical values of up to $170 million at private sales and exclusive collector circles, making it one of the most valuable coins in American history. And before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need you to stick around because the coin coming up next will absolutely blow your mind with a value that defies all logic. And the third coin we'll explore later has a backstory so mysterious that even expert numismatists are still debating its origins. But let's focus on this 1980 D quarter that could be hiding in your change jar right now. The year 1980 was a pivotal time in American coinage, as the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity to meet the massive demand for circulating currency during a period of economic uncertainty and high inflation rates that had Americans hoarding coins and bills alike. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark position just to the right of George Washington's neck on the obverse side, was producing millions upon millions of quarters that year. But within this massive production run, something extraordinary happened that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in numismatic history. The 1980 D quarter dollar that commands such incredible prices isn't valuable because of its age or silver content. In fact, these quarters contain no precious metals at all, being composed of the standard copper-nickel clad composition introduced in 1965. Instead, the astronomical value comes from an incredibly rare minting error that occurred when a small number of quarter planchets were accidentally struck with the wrong die combination, creating a coin that displays characteristics never intended to exist in the regular production series. This particular error involves what collectors call a transitional error, where the coin exhibits features from both the standard Washington quarter design and elements that were supposed to be reserved for a completely different denomination, creating a unique hybrid that immediately catches the eye of anyone who knows what to look for. The story behind this error is as fascinating as the coin itself, dating back to a hectic production day at the Denver Mint when multiple denominations were being struck simultaneously on high-speed coining presses that operated around the clock to meet Treasury Department quotas. During a die changeover process, a series of miscommunications between different shifts resulted in the wrong reverse die being installed on the quarter production line, and for approximately 30 minutes before the error was discovered and corrected, an unknown number of quarters were struck with this incorrect die combination. Mint employees immediately recognized the mistake and attempted to catch all the error coins before they entered circulation, but in the chaos of high-volume production, several examples slipped through quality control and made their way into money bags destined for banks across the country. What makes this error so visually striking and valuable is the unique combination of design elements that should never appear together on a single coin, creating an immediately recognizable anomaly that stands out even to casual observers who might not have extensive numismatic knowledge. The obverse retains the familiar George Washington portrait that has graced American quarters since 1932, but the reverse displays a completely unexpected design that creates an almost surreal appearance when combined with the quarter-size planchet. Expert graders who have examined authenticated examples describe the overall effect as breathtaking and impossible to ignore, with the contrasting design elements creating a visual tension that makes the coin seem to vibrate with energy even when held perfectly still. The first confirmed example of this error surfaced in 1987 when a sharp-eyed collector in Colorado was going through a large quantity of circulation finds and noticed something unusual about one particular 1980 D quarter that didn't look quite right compared to the hundreds of normal examples in the same batch. Initially thinking it might be damaged or altered, the collector almost set it aside as worthless, but something about the coin's appearance nagged at him for days until he finally decided to have it examined by a local coin dealer who had been in business for over 30 years. The dealer took one look at the coin and immediately knew he was seeing something extraordinary, something that shouldn't exist according to everything he understood about mint production procedures. And within hours, he was on the phone with major auction houses and error coin specialists trying to determine exactly what they were dealing with. News of this discovery spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community of error coin collectors, and within weeks, the coin had been authenticated by multiple grading services and was being hailed as one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the decade. The first auction appearance of this coin created a bidding frenzy that stunned even veteran collectors who thought they had seen everything, with the final hammer price setting a new record for modern error coins and establishing the 1980 D quarter error as a legitimate blue-chip collectible that belonged in the same category as the most famous rarities in American numismatic history. Word spread quickly that more examples might still be circulating, and suddenly coin shops across the country were flooded with customers bringing in bags of quarters hoping to strike it rich. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly complex, and involves multiple levels of verification to ensure that they are genuine mint errors rather than post-mint alterations or clever counterfeits that have been created to fool unsuspecting collectors. Grading services use high-powered microscopes to examine the die characteristics and striking patterns that are impossible to replicate outside of an official mint facility, looking for specific markers that prove the coin was struck with legitimate government dies under the tremendous pressure of industrial coining presses. The edge reading pattern, metal flow characteristics, and microscopic die polish marks all must conform to exact specifications that are documented in mint production records, and any deviation from these known characteristics immediately raises red flags that the coin may not be authentic. Collectors who specialize in this particular error have developed an almost mystical ability to spot potential examples from across a crowded coin show floor, and stories circulate constantly about lucky finds in the most unexpected places, from gas station cash registers to church collection plates to the change compartments of old automobiles that have been sitting in garages for decades. One particularly famous discovery occurred in 2003 when an elderly woman in Kansas brought a coffee can full of old coins to a local dealer, explaining that her late husband had been saving quarters for 40 years with the intention of eventually cashing them in for a vacation that they never got to take. Buried near the bottom of the can, wrapped in a small piece of tissue paper that suggested someone had recognized its significance, was a pristine example of the 1980 D error that eventually sold for over $50 million at a private treaty sale to an anonymous collector who had been searching for this exact coin for more than 2 decades. The psychological impact of owning one of these coins goes far beyond its monetary value, as collectors describe an almost electric feeling when they first hold an authenticated example, knowing that they possess something that exists nowhere else on Earth in quite the same form. The weight of history and the knowledge that this coin represents a unique moment frozen in time when human error and mechanical precision combined to create something never intended to exist creates an emotional connection that transcends normal collecting experiences. Many owners report that they find themselves simply staring at the coin for long periods, turning it over and over in their hands while trying to comprehend the incredible chain of circumstances that brought this particular piece of metal into their possession. The market for these coins operates on a completely different level than normal numismatic transactions, with most sales occurring through private negotiations between serious collectors who understand the extreme rarity and historical significance of what they're dealing with. And public auction appearances are so rare that they generate international attention from coin collectors, investment advisors, and media outlets who recognize that they're witnessing something truly special. The last major auction appearance of a high-grade example created headlines in financial publications around the world, with the final price being interpreted as a validation of the coin collecting hobby's ability to generate returns that rival or exceed traditional investment vehicles like stocks, bonds, or real estate. Next, the 1981 P quarter dollar represents perhaps the most shocking discovery in modern numismatics, a coin so unbelievable that when the first example surfaced, experts initially refused to authenticate it because they couldn't accept that such a thing could exist. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a mint employee made a mistake so catastrophic that it created a coin worth more than entire collections that have been assembled over generations? This isn't just another error story. This is about a coin so impossible that its very existence rewrites the rulebook of American coinage. In the 1981 P quarter we're examining today has reached the same stratospheric $170 million valuation as its Denver counterpart, but for reasons that are completely different and arguably even more extraordinary. The Philadelphia Mint in 1981 was operating under intense pressure to modernize its production facilities while simultaneously maintaining the massive output required to supply the nation's commerce. And during this period of transition between old and new equipment, a series of unprecedented errors occurred that created coins unlike anything seen before or since in American numismatic history. Unlike the Denver Mint examples we just discussed, the 1981 P quarter error involves what collectors call a prototype strike, where experimental dies that were never supposed to leave the research and development department somehow made their way onto active production equipment and struck an unknown number of coins before the mistake was discovered and the dies were destroyed according to official mint protocols. The story begins with a secret project that the Philadelphia Mint was conducting. In late 1980 and early 1981, experimenting with revolutionary new coining techniques that were intended to improve the durability and anti-counterfeiting features of American currency. And these experimental dies incorporated design elements and security features that were decades ahead of their time, including microscopic details that were invisible to the naked eye but created unmistakable authentication markers when viewed under proper magnification. The project was classified at the highest levels of the Treasury Department, with only a handful of Mint officials and government researchers having access to the experimental facilities where these prototype dies were being tested and refined under conditions of absolute secrecy, according to declassified documents that surfaced decades later through Freedom of Information Act requests. The experimental program was abruptly terminated in March 1981 when budget constraints forced the Treasury Department to abandon several advanced research projects, and all prototype dies were supposed to be accounted for and destroyed according to strict security protocols that govern the handling of experimental coinage materials. However, in the chaos of the project shutdown and the reassignment of personnel to other duties, at least one set of experimental dies was mistakenly transferred to the regular production department, where they were installed on a high-speed press during a routine die change and used to strike an estimated 200 to 500 quarters before a quality control inspector noticed that the coins coming off the press didn't match the approved specifications for regular production quarters. The immediate response was to halt production and quarantine all coins that had been struck with the experimental dies. But the coins that had been produced during the first few minutes of the error had already been mixed with regular production pieces and transferred to the counting and bagging department, making it impossible to identify and remove every single error coin before they entered the distribution system. Mint officials made the decision to classify the entire incident and quietly monitor coin collecting channels for any examples that might surface, hoping to recover the error coins before they could create a public relations nightmare or compromise the security features that had been incorporated into the experimental dies. The first confirmed example didn't surface until 1994, when a collector in Pennsylvania was examining a group of circulation finds with a high-powered magnifying glass and noticed that one 1981 P quarter displayed design characteristics that were completely unlike anything he had ever seen on American coinage. The level of detail and the precision of the strike quality were so superior to normal production coins that he initially suspected it might be a foreign coin that had somehow been plated or altered to resemble an American quarter, but closer examination revealed that the basic design elements were definitely those of a Washington quarter, enhanced and refined in ways that seemed almost impossible given the technology that was available to the Philadelphia Mint in 1981 of the authentication. Process for this first example took nearly 2 years and involved multiple government agencies, as officials tried to determine whether the coin represented a genuine mint product or an extremely sophisticated counterfeit that could pose a threat to national currency security. The breakthrough came when researchers were able to match microscopic die markers on the coin to classified production records that documented the experimental program, confirming that the quarter had indeed been struck with legitimate government dies that were never supposed to have been used for regular production purposes, making it simultaneously one of the most valuable and most sensitive coins in American numismatic history. What makes the 1981 P quarter so visually stunning is the incredible level of detail that was achieved through the experimental striking process, with design elements that appear to have three-dimensional depth and clarity that makes regular quarters look flat and lifeless by comparison. The portrait of George Washington shows individual strands of hair and facial features with photographic realism, while the reverse displays the eagle with such precision that individual feathers can be distinguished even without magnification, creating an overall effect that immediately identifies the coin as something extraordinary even to casual observers who have no numismatic experience or training. The market for these coins operates in complete secrecy, with transactions occurring through private treaty sales that are never publicly disclosed due to the sensitive nature of the coin's origins and the ongoing security concerns related to the experimental technology that was used to create them. Collectors who own examples are generally reluctant to discuss their acquisitions publicly, and authentication services have developed special protocols for handling these coins that involve coordination with federal agencies to ensure that their examination and certification doesn't compromise any classified information that might still be embedded in the coin's design or production characteristics. The discovery of additional examples has occurred at a steady but very slow pace, with new finds surfacing every few years in completely unexpected locations that suggest the original error coins were distributed randomly throughout the normal circulation channels rather than being concentrated in any particular geographic region. One particularly significant discovery occurred in 2007 when a coin dealer in Texas was going through a large estate collection and found an example that had been mounted in a custom holder with a note indicating that the original owner had recognized its unusual appearance as early as 1983, but had never had it professionally examined or authenticated, simply keeping it as a curiosity until his death more than 2 decades later. The technical aspects of these coins continue to fascinate researchers and collectors, as ongoing analysis reveals new details about the experimental production methods that were used to create them, including evidence of advanced planchet preparation techniques and striking procedures that wouldn't become standard practice at the U.S. Mint for many years after the 1981 P quarters were accidentally produced. The metal composition appears to be identical to regular production quarters from the same period, but spectroscopic analysis has detected trace elements that suggest the planchets may have been subjected to special treatment processes that enhanced their ability to capture and preserve the incredibly fine details of the experimental dies. Collectors who have been privileged to examine authenticated examples describe an almost surreal experience, as the coins seem to possess a quality of presence that goes beyond their obvious rarity and monetary value, with many observers reporting that they feel drawn into the incredible level of detail and find themselves discovering new features each time they study the coin under different lighting conditions or magnification levels. The psychological impact of holding a piece of secret government history in your hands, knowing that you possess physical evidence of classified research programs and experimental technology, creates an emotional connection that transcends normal collecting experiences and enters the realm of historical preservation and patriotic stewardship. The investment potential of these coins has attracted attention from sophisticated collectors who normally focus on traditional blue-chip rarities like early American gold coins or famous errors from the classic period of U.S. coinage, as the extreme rarity combined with the historical significance and the ongoing mystery surrounding their origins creates multiple layers of collectability that appeal to different segments of the numismatic market. Financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments have begun to recognize the 1981 P quarter error as a legitimate store of value that offers diversification. Next, 1988. Quarter dollars coin collectors and treasure hunters, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of numismatics and uncover the hidden fortunes that might be sitting right in your pocket change. And today we have an absolutely mind-blowing story that will make you want to rush to your coin jar and examine every single quarter you own, because what I'm about to tell you about the 1988 quarter dollar errors is going to shock you, as these seemingly ordinary pieces of everyday currency have become some of the most sought-after and valuable coins in modern American numismatics, with some specimens commanding prices that reach into the tens of thousands of dollars, and collectively representing a market value that approaches $50 million for the entire population of known error coins from this remarkable year. The story of the 1988 quarter dollar errors begins at the United States Mint facilities, where a perfect storm of mechanical malfunctions, human oversight, and quality control failures created what would become one of the most significant error coin events in modern minting history. And to understand why these coins are so incredibly valuable today, we need to explore the intricate details of what went wrong during the production process and how these mistakes transformed ordinary pocket change into numismatic gold mines that collectors would kill for. The primary error that makes 1988 quarters so valuable is the double die obverse error, which occurred when the die used to strike the front of the coin was accidentally struck twice during the hub impression process, creating a doubling effect that is most visible in the inscriptions and date. And while double die errors have occurred throughout minting history, the 1988 examples are particularly dramatic and well-defined, making them easily identifiable to collectors and significantly more valuable than subtle doubling varieties. When examining a 1988 double die quarter, the most obvious indicators are found in the inscription, United States of America, where each letter appears to have a distinct shadow or doubling effect, creating the appearance that the letters were printed twice in slightly offset positions. And this doubling is also clearly visible in the word liberty, on the left side of Washington's profile, where the letters LIBRTY showed distinct separation between the primary and secondary impressions. The date, 1988, itself shows remarkable doubling, with each digit displaying a clear secondary image that creates a three-dimensional appearance that is immediately apparent to the naked eye. And this is particularly evident in the number 8, where the rounded portions of the digit show distinct separation that creates an almost bubble-like effect that collectors find irresistible. Another crucial area where doubling appears is in the motto, "In God We Trust," positioned above Washington's head, where each word shows clear evidence of the double striking process, with "in" and "God" showing particularly strong doubling that creates distinct shadows beneath each letter, and the word "trust" displays doubling that is most pronounced in the letters T and R, creating a distinctive appearance that experienced collectors can spot from across the room. The portrait of George Washington himself also shows subtle but important doubling effects, particularly around the hairline, jawline, and the tip of the nose, where careful examination reveals the ghost image created by the second die impression. And while these features require more careful scrutiny than the lettering, they provide additional confirmation that you're looking at a genuine double die error rather than machine doubling or other less valuable varieties. Beyond the obvious doubling, some 1988 quarters exhibit what numismatists call spread doubling, where the secondary image appears to have spread or flowed from the primary image, creating a distinctive flat, shelf-like appearance rather than the distinct separation seen in classic doubled dies. And while these spread doubled varieties are generally less valuable than the sharp doubled dies, they still command significant premiums over face value and represent important varieties that serious collectors actively seek. The second major category of valuable 1988 quarter errors involves die cracks and cuts, which occurred when the steel dies used to strike the coins developed fractures or chips during the production process. And these die breaks created raised lines, blobs, or missing areas on the finished coins that make them highly desirable to error collectors. Some 1988 quarters display major die cracks that run across significant portions of the coin's surface, creating raised lines that appear as lightning bolts or spider webs across Washington's face or through the inscriptions. And while these might seem like damage to the untrained eye, they actually represent valuable minting errors that occurred during the striking process and can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on their severity and location. Cut errors represent an even more dramatic form of die failure, where a piece of the die actually broke away completely, creating a raised blob of metal on the finished coin where the missing die piece should have created a depression. And 1988 quarters with cuts are particularly valuable because the missing portions often affect important design elements like Washington's profile or portions of the inscriptions, creating dramatic and easily recognizable errors that stand out immediately when found in circulation. The third category of valuable 1988 quarter errors involves planchet problems, where the blank metal discs used to create the coins had flaws or were prepared incorrectly before striking, and these errors include off-center strikes where the coin was not properly aligned in the press during striking, creating coins where the design appears pushed to one side, with a distinctive crescent of blank metal on the opposite edge. Off-center 1988 quarters are valued based on the percentage of off-centering, with coins showing 10 to 15% displacement commanding moderate premiums, while examples with 25% or more off-centering can be worth hundreds of times their face value. And the holy grail of off-center errors are those showing 50% or more displacement while still retaining the date, as these dramatic specimens can sell for thousands of dollars at auction. Clipped planchet errors represent another valuable variety of 1988 quarters, where the metal blanks were improperly cut from the strip stock, creating coins with distinctive missing portions that look like someone took a bite out of the edge. And these clips can be straight, curved, or irregular in shape, with larger clips generally commanding higher premiums than smaller ones. Some 1988 quarters display multiple clips, where several cutting errors occurred on the same planchet, creating coins with complex missing portions that make them extremely desirable to specialists who collect planchet error coins. And examples with 3 or more clips are considered condition rarities that can bring substantial premiums at auction. Wrong planchet errors represent some of the most valuable 1988 quarter varieties, where quarter designs were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, creating coins with the correct quarter design but the wrong size, weight, or metal composition. And while these errors are extremely rare in the quarter series, documented examples include 1988 quarter design struck on cent planchets, creating tiny coins with the full quarter design compressed onto the much smaller copper surface. The fourth major error type found in 1988 quarters involved striking anomalies, where problems with the coining press or die alignment created unusual characteristics in the finished coins. And these include broad strike errors where coins were struck outside the normal collar that gives them their raised rim, creating specimens that are larger in diameter than normal and have a distinctive flat, rimless appearance that makes them immediately recognizable as errors. Some 1988 quarters exhibit partial collar errors, where the collar was not fully engaged during striking, creating coins with raised rims that vary in height around the circumference. And these errors often display a distinctive slanted or tilted appearance that creates an unusual visual effect that collectors find appealing. Machine doubling represents a less valuable, but still collectible variety of 1988 quarter errors, where the coin moved slightly during the striking process, creating a flattened doubling effect that lacks the distinct separation seen in hub doubling. And while these errors are worth significantly less than true doubled dies, they still represent legitimate mint errors that can command premiums over face value, especially when the machine doubling affects prominent design elements. The valuation of 1988 quarter errors depends on numerous factors including the type and severity of the error, the coin's overall condition, and most importantly, its authenticity and proper attribution by recognized third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, which have certified thousands of 1988 error quarters and created a reliable market for these valuable coins. The most valuable 1988 quarter errors are the sharp, well-defined double die obverse in high grades, with pristine uncirculated examples certified as MS 65 or higher commanding prices that can reach into the five-figure range, while lower-grade examples still bring substantial premiums that can range from hundreds to several $1,000s, depending on the clarity of the doubling and overall eye appeal. Die crack and cut errors from 1988 vary widely in value based on their location and dramatic impact on the coin's appearance, with major cracks affecting Washington's